The fake media has been saying for weeks that Biden is president-elect, but they're lying, okay? This is deep state propaganda, folks. Donald Trump's team just laid out a clear path to victory. Stay tuned, I'll tell you all about it. Hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Deep State. I'm Alex Newman, your host. And the deep state has been propagandizing and doing psychological warfare on the American people since like November 4th. Oh, President Trump is done and the American people have spoken and Biden is the president-elect. Actually, no, not even close. In fact, a press conference that just recently happened with Donald Trump's all-star legal team, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and several others, just laid out the very clear, as Trump called it, the very clear and viable path to victory. They also proved that the establishment media, the propagandists of the deep state, are nothing more than liars. There are at least 6 states that are currently in play where Donald Trump has the opportunity to, if not overturn, then at least disqualify the fraud there, which would mean that Donald Trump still has a very, very good chance of becoming president once again and spending another 4 years in the White House. Now, the media has been saying over and over again, first it was, there is no evidence of fraud. Okay, then they realized, all right, well, that's not going to work because everybody knows there's evidence of fraud. Well, we'll just say there is no widespread evidence of fraud. And that didn't work either because now it's obvious to everybody who's not living under a rock or watching CNN that there is actually widespread evidence of fraud. So now they've switched to Plan C. There is no compelling evidence of widespread fraud. And of course, that was a lie as well, as we heard from this press conference.
There are many more affidavits here. I'd like to read them all to you, but I don't have the time. You should have had the time and energy to go look for them. That's your job. Like it's my job to defend the president and to represent the president. It's your job to read these things and not falsely report that there's no evidence. Do you know how many affidavits we have in the Michigan case? 220 affidavits. They're not all public, but 8 of them are. 4 affiants here, those are people who give affidavits, report an incident that under any other circumstances would have been on the front page of all your newspapers if it didn't involve the hatred that you have, irrational, pathological hatred that you have for the president.
Now, even before the press conference started, Donald Trump was tweeting out, said his attorneys would show a very clear and viable path to victory in this 2020 election. And some of the states that are in play now, we've got Wisconsin, we've got Michigan, we've got Pennsylvania, we've got Nevada, we've got Arizona, and actually there are even 2 new states that Rudy Giuliani mentioned at this press conference, Virginia and New Mexico.
And the state that we're looking at that would surprise you is we have very, very significant amount of fraud allegations in the state of New Mexico, and we have a significant number of allegations in the state of Virginia. I don't know yet whether the number in Virginia will reach the number that can turn the election.
The president tweeted out that the pieces are very nicely falling into place. Now, you probably won't hear much of this from the fake media. So the main spokesman at the press conference was former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, one of the most important districts, Rudy Giuliani. And I've got my disagreements with Giuliani. He used to be the mayor of New York City. But I'll tell you what, he has a reputation as a bulldog. This guy took on the mafia and won. And so he's got a long history of taking on shady underworld characters and criminals. And I think that defines and describes the deep state very, very nicely. And throughout the press conference, I mean, it was just like, rapid fire machine gun. Giuliani was just spraying out the evidence that they have of the fraud.
Well, they were good. I don't know that they were that good because they made significant mistakes, like all crooks do, and we caught them.
Giuliani also pointed out that the New York Times and Jimmy Carter and a whole bunch of radical leftists have been warning for years that mail-in ballots and other things were very susceptible to fraud. Well, as Giuliani put it, they have now been proven correct. The mail-in voting process was an absolute nightmare. So Giuliani walked through the different evidence in the different states. He talked about Pennsylvania, and particularly focused in on Philadelphia and Pittsburgh.
The number of voter fraud cases in Philadelphia could fill a library. Just a few weeks ago, there was a conviction for voter fraud, and 2 weeks before that. And I've often said, I guess sarcastically, but it's true, The only surprise I would have found in this is if Philadelphia hadn't cheated in this election, because for the last 60 years, they've cheated in just about every single election.
One of the things he pointed out about Pittsburgh was really interesting. He said 17,000 provisional ballots were handed out, and that suggests massive evidence of fraud. He said 15,000 of those people were told that they had already voted. So what Giuliani supposed was that probably the vote fraud operators were filling out a bunch of phony ballots for people who they didn't expect to vote. Those people showed up at the polling place and they said, oh, no big deal, here, have a provisional ballot. So they got caught red-handed. 15,000 people forgetting that they had already voted. You know, a handful, okay, that's believable. 15,000, yeah, come on, we're not idiots, right? Now, he also said he's got a whole bunch of witnesses, just stacked hundreds and hundreds of witnesses who are testifying and who will testify under penalty of perjury that the election was rigged.
Do you know how many affidavits we have in the Michigan case? 220 affidavits. They're not all public, but 8 of them are. And I'd like you to note that it's signed under penalties of perjury. We have 100 more of these.
They've got people willing to testify that Democrat Party bosses ordered them to participate in this fraud, that they ordered them to give provisional ballots to those who arrived and wanted to vote after fraudulent votes had already been cast on their behalf. He talked about how other witnesses are going to testify about the fact that they were prevented from watching the vote counting, even though there was court orders and state laws in place that mandate the observation of these elections. These irregularities were all over the place, multiple states, according to Trump's attorneys, and that suggests coordination and conspiracy on a national level. One of the witnesses that Giuliani cited said that they were ordered to alter the dates on the absentee ballots, that they were ordered not to ask for ID from voters, that they were taught to coach voters on how they ought to be voting. Some witnesses that Giuliani have sworn under oath that they were witnessing poll workers shove Biden ballots through the machines multiple times to count a whole bunch of ballots for Biden that didn't actually exist. And this is all over the place, guys. In Georgia, he said the recount in Georgia is a giant fraud. He pointed out that basically they've already thrown away the envelopes, which is what would have given us the evidence of the fraud. He said in Michigan, they've got more than 200 affidavits offering evidence of fraud under penalty of perjury. He said that if you count the ballots, the lawful votes, Trump automatically won Wisconsin. They said they're going to file lawsuits in Arizona, maybe New Mexico, maybe even Virginia. So, guys, there is a lot going on here. Julia also pointed out that the media are lying, right? When the media says that there is no evidence of fraud, it's an absolute lie. An affidavit, a sworn affidavit from an eyewitness, is one of the most powerful forms of evidence that you can use in a court of law. Giuliani and Sidney Powell and the Trump team have got stacks and stacks and stacks of affidavits, including from Democrats, by the way. Then we had former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell, who's just a jewel, a treasure, a wonderful American. She talked about Dominion voting systems, this fraudulent computer programs and hardware that she said were used to switch millions of votes from Trump to Biden. She pointed out that the software for this monstrosity was created in Venezuela under the direction of the mass murdering socialist dictator Hugo Chavez, who was infamous for, among other things, rigging elections.
And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Even before the press conference, one of Trump recount committee team members, Brian Trasher, he said in a November 18th interview on Newsmax that servers in Germany belonging to Dominion had been seized and that they were now going through there. There is massive evidence of voter fraud on there. They said, he says, I want everybody to listen to me. The things that are going to come out are going to shake the globalists to their very core. You got that, folks? The deep state is in hot water. He also said that once it's become clear that Trump is going to win, the deep state and the left are going to send out terror mobs that are going to make the unrest we've seen already look like child's play by comparison. Naturally, the fake media did what they do best, and they lied. They just lied. They ignored or they lied. So Bloomberg is a good example. It's the personal propaganda outlet of the totalitarian Michael Bloomberg, who we actually met in Madrid at a UN conference. We asked him a question. He said, "Have a nice day," in the creepiest possible way that you could imagine. And his fake news outlet lied. They just blatantly lied. They said that Giuliani had refused to share the names of witnesses against a conspiracy. Actually, he named several, including a Democrat, Jesse Jacob of Detroit, who is swearing under oath that she witnessed the fraud and she just wants honest elections. Bloomberg also claimed falsely that Trump's attorneys offered no new allegations of fraud and presented no evidence for their claims. The entire press conference was allegations of fraud and evidence for the claims. They were reading from the affidavits. This is the definition of evidence. They could not be more dishonest, folks. And actually, a big part of the press conference was talking about how dishonest the fake media is. So, guys, we have an incredible situation in America. We have never had vote fraud this blatant, this brazen. We've been covering it like crazy at the New American Magazine. That was the subject of our recent episodes of Behind the Deep State. We will stay on top of this. This is maybe the story of the century here, trying to steal the election in the greatest, freest republic in the world. We have also outlined in a series of articles how Trump can still win. Trump's team elaborated on that a little bit, guys. So if they can even just disqualify some of these states that were obviously rigged, that means nobody gets to 270 in the Electoral College. That means the 12th Amendment kicks in. Congress will make the decision. Most state delegations are Republican, meaning President Trump would win the election. Okay, lots of viable paths to victory, folks, here. The media is lying, and despite their lies, the election is far from over. Turn off the television, tune into the New American Magazine, subscribe, share this video, get the word out, guys. Everybody can be doing something here. Do not let them steal our nation by stealing this election. I'm Alex Newman with Behind the Deep State. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and God bless you all.
You know, it's no surprise that Facebook and YouTube and all the titans and tyrants of Silicon Valley, are the big tech companies, are censoring our content. We might not even be on these platforms for too much longer with the way things are going, folks. That's why it's all the more important that you head over to thenewamerican.com. You can sign up for our daily, weekly, or even monthly headlines. They'll get emailed directly to you. Better yet, you can subscribe to the New American Magazine. You'll get these delivered right to your door, and they can't censor a printed magazine. So hey, get over to thenewamerican.com, sign up today, and stay informed in the fight for freedom.